Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for running late. Sometimes work gets in the way of reality. I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 2:01. Can we go ahead and proceed with the roll call?
Chair Ambler,
Present?
Vice Chair Ponte, Judith McLaughlin,
Present.
Paul Tilka,
Present.
all present except for Ms. Ponte.
Okay.
We have a quorum.
Yes. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Can we call for a vote, please?
Judith Ann,
In favor? Aye.
Paul Tilka,
I'm in favor.
Jean Ambler.
In favor.
Motion carried 3-0.
Perfect. Okay, unlike our previous meetings where we have been primarily discussing the document for the HR policies, at our last session, we felt that it's important to understand the Civil Service Commission roles and responsibilities. I would suggest that we take a moment and review them as they currently stand, and then we take a look at the proposed revisions. And then I would also like to understand our role as whether or not we have any influence on the changes, or are we only here to just provide input? Now, I was talking with our attorney briefly, and he's got to leave at 10 to 3, so I would like to make sure that anything that needs his input that we get to before then. Okay? All righty. Anybody have any comments, questions?
I see there's someone in the audience. I'm wondering if they're here for public comment or just to observe.
Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, no comment.
That's our new mayor.
Sorry.
Only the mayor, yeah. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Mayor. All righty. I spent a little bit of time this morning reviewing the document that you had graciously given us, Claire, at the beginning of the year. And in tab 1, we've got the Madeira Beach Code. And then in tab 2, we've got Division 4 Civil Service Commission. I'd like to better understand what's the difference between tab 1 and tab 2.
Well, your city charter tab is the one that the voters vote on the rules. And the only way to change that would be take it back to the voters. And then the city code is adopted by ordinance, which can be, changed or,
And that's what we have in tab 1, where it says Madeira Beach Code.
that
Is that
one,
correct?
yes, is adopted by ordinance, and that can be changed at any time by the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, and that's what's being, the changes being proposed to this document.
Yes.
Then in tab 2, a document was created 210903, and that's what we have in tab 2. It's entitled Division 4 Civil Service Commission. Can you please help me understand the difference or how this incorporates what's in tab 1?
Are you talking about the city charter?
It's,
Here, I don't see tab, I see A, looking here. Civil service rules, mine's not counted as tab 1.
mine is in tab 2 in the book you gave us.
Is that the proposed ordinance 2023-06? Revisions of Code of Ordinances, Division 4, Civil Service Commission? I would hand that over to the attorney to explain that one.
Let me just show you what I'm talking about, if I might.
What those are is the last time the revision was made to the code. That's an ordinance number. It was it was created in 2021, September the 3rd, 2021. And then if the Board of Commissioners adopts the new proposed ordinance, that one will go down there. That's a reference tab.
Okay, thank you. So if I'm understanding, we have the original, and then in our tab 2, we've got 3 pages of a document that was created in 2021 in September, and that was passed? Claire, is that what I'm
The
understanding?
code of ordinances that you have, the code that you have in the packet is what was passed. That's what's currently in the code book today. And the proposed changes, if it gets adopted by the Board of Commissioners, then it will be edited. Then when it gets codified by municipal code, it'll show the new revisions in the code. But the ordinance will take effect immediately when the Board of Commissioners adopts it.
Okay. So then, and I'm sorry to be a little slow, this Division 4 Civil Service Commission, this was adopted by code, you're saying?
Yes, it was.
Okay,
It's in the code.
all righty.
Yes, ma'am.
There is, if, in the city code, it's, chapter 2, division 4, civil service commission.
Mm-hmm.
That division was originally created in 1983. Some of the sections therein, and it includes, section 2-126 through 2-129.
Yes.
Okay.
So some of those sections, actually, one of the sections was amended. Oh, thank you. One of those sections was amended in 2004, and then in 2006, and then again in 2019. I don't know what the amendments were, because you'd have to look at the actual ordinances, but 2-127 was amended those 4 times. So the last time it was looked at was 2019.
Okay.
So what you then have is ordinance 2023-06, which are the proposed amendments to Division 4.
So our base document then, that is going to be revised, our starting point, if you will, is it what looks like a photocopy of the Madeira Beach Code and this next page?
Well, the easiest thing to do is how the code reads right now. Someone did print it out. I've got it as item 5A. I don't know if your package is the same.
In the package that we just received today?
What I printed off the website is, up in the corner, there's a box, and it says item 5A.
Okay.
Page 10.
Did y'all not get that version?
R5A says section 5.7 personnel systems, Civil Service Commission, and we have a 5B that's ordinance 2023-06.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
this is
so
the one.
5A is how the code reads right now. 5B is an ordinance that makes revisions to how the code reads right now.
Okay, so this is the one that we should be looking at.
So in
Okay.
terms of, I mean, if you just look at ordinance 2023-06, what is there that's not underlined or stricken, and what is stricken is how it currently reads. What is underlined is things that are new.
And that begins on page 15 of the packet.
Okay,
Top of the page says ordinance 2023-06.
all right.
That's what's being proposed.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So what we had received in our book, tab 1 was the original from 1983, and then there was a revision. The one we should be looking at is the one in our packet.
Yes, there were several revisions, and
Okay.
this one will make another revision. They can be changed at any time by the Board of Commissioners.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anybody else want any clarification on what we need to be working through? No. Does it make sense then to go through, starting on page 15 of today's packet, and bring up any of our questions? Okay.
And there's actually two ordinances that you're asked to look at today. There's 2023-06 and 2023-07.
That's the whistleblower.
Correct.
Okay.
And you can also make suggestive changes on these, if you wish.
One of the questions that I had from the previous, and I see it still exists, is on page 17, the failure of any member of the Civil Service Commission to attend 2 of 3 successive meetings without cause and without prior approval of the chairperson. Now, in the past, I've not been notified if if people aren't going to attend.
Sometimes they don't let us know, we won't know,
Okay.
like today.
So, but
So it's,
I would-
it's incumbent upon each member, and we try to go through this when a new member comes on board to orient them, and here's what the code reads and so forth, but it's incumbent upon each member, if they learn that they are not going to be able to attend a scheduled meeting, to contact the clerk, say, I need to be excused, and then the clerk would verify from the chair that the person can be excused for whatever their reason is, and then the minutes would reflect excused absence. What this is intended for is, if I just decide to check out and not come and not call anybody, we don't have to vote that you get off, it's deemed vacant. Yeah, you've abandoned your role, and we need to fill it with somebody else.
I agree with that. I just didn't want it to be, the calls to be coming to me. I want it to go, as you
It
described.
goes to the clerk, yeah.
To the clerk, so
because
that's-
we don't want any sunshine issues.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
May I just ask, would attending meetings virtually, should that be addressed as something that counts as participation? Or do we want to make sure it's in-person
So
attendance?
the city attorney has advised the city commission that attendance must be in person. So,
Is it worth putting language to that effect?
when we do a new member orientation, I cover sunshine, ethics, records, procedures, and so at that point, we would cover that.
Okay.
You wouldn't necessarily want to put such procedural stuff in every single board, because we have a lot of boards and committees, and then it gets confusing of, well, you said it here, but you didn't say it there, so.
All right. And I'm sorry to jump ahead. I think it probably makes sense to go in order, like we usually do. So with section 1, A, the intent is to provide the scope of authority. Correct? Any questions on that? All right, now we're going to get into a little more of the meat. The Civil Service Commission shall preside over appeals of disciplinary terminations of regular non-probationary employees, but shall not consider appeals of disciplinary actions against employees who are classified at will. Okay.
Right, and so what the intent there is that your role is to provide a due process opportunity for people who are civil service protected. Your very name is civil service. However, in public employment, there are positions that are not civil service protected. For instance, our manager is not civil service protected. I don't know where the breakdown is on department heads. Usually they're at will. And then you have probationary employees who, until they've been here a certain period of time, don't have civil service protection. So they don't have any due process rights, and so there's nothing to appeal. So part of my drafting here is to try to bring greater clarity and specificity so that employees who read this and lawyers who read this are very clear as to what comes before you and what doesn't.
Okay. Can I ask how many townships have a civil service commission with this type of responsibility?
I don't think very many, but
I know that
we can
City of
check.
St. Petersburg has a civil service board, I think they call it. Some of your bigger legacy cities like Tampa, Clearwater does because I'm counsel to it. So I know they still do, but many of your smaller jurisdictions do not. A lot of jurisdictions, you can provide due process in various ways. And so some jurisdictions have a hard time getting citizen volunteers for a civil service type of commission. And so they instead send appeals to a magistrate, or even for some jurisdictions, they designate a department head who wasn't involved in the matter to sit as the person who hears the disciplinary appeal. So it's something that, it took roots in the 70s and 80s, civil service commissions. It's kind of fallen out of favor, but it's still in our charter, so unless and until it's out of our charter, you exist.
Okay. I have a question on that, but I think I'm going to hold it until we go through these. Any questions, comments about Section 2, appointment and membership? I've got a question about G, where it says, members of the Civil Service Commission shall schedule in advance quarterly meetings. However, if the chair, in consultation with the city managers, determines that there are no agenda items requiring a scheduled meeting, the chair is authorized to cancel that, instruct the court. So in other words, this is a change saying that we can schedule it, but if there's nothing that has come up to review, the chair, in conjunction with the court, has the right to cancel that meeting.
With the clerk, yeah.
Right, with the clerk, yeah. Okay.
Don't start calling the clerk Your Honor, because then
Sorry.
It's going right on here, I like it.
Too much TV going on with all this, Your Honor this and Judge that.
No,
Sorry,
I mean,
thank you.
it's just, the reality is, y'all are volunteers, and you have lives and jobs and stuff, and so if we have no business to come before us, it's kind of pointless to drag y'all here, and so that this is just provides a tool. You want to pre-schedule your meetings so that everyone can get them on their calendars, but then as it approaches, if there's no appeal, if there's no policy changes, manager doesn't need to consult with you on anything, it could just be canceled.
And this is one of the bigger changes, correct, to this?
It's a change.
Yeah. Thoughts, comments, questions? I'm sorry, Paul?
Not necessarily on that item, but going back to your prior question about how many cities have civil service commissions, I sat on the Charter Review Committee, and Claire provided us with 20-some charters from different communities in Florida, and about half of them had civil service commissions. So that would answer that. And I think it's well and good that we do have one.
Correct. I think all the ones that I had produced, searched for all those of the 19, 20 of them, and I stopped there, were Charlotte City, civil service, yes.
That's all I have to comment on.
Okay.
State to go back, but.
I'm jumping up to what is K, unless anybody has anything prior to that. It talks about the human resources staff. or such other staff as may be designated by the city shall serve as staff persons for the Civil Service Commission and shall attend all meetings. So I noticed today that Sean isn't with us. So would that mean,
Sean is no longer here at the city.
oh,
So Megan Powers is now the staff person, just as you read.
okay, okay. All righty, thank you for that. What was his last day?
Actually, it's the 31st, this Friday.
Okay. All righty. I want to circle back to that, and as it pertains to how we proceed with our document, but let's save that until the end. Next, section L talks about the city attorney being the legal. Any questions on that? Can somebody, Rob, I think you talk about M, the notwithstanding the foregoing, if the sole judgment of the city manager, the nature and the complexity requires an assistant city attorney.
So,
What's the intent?
the situation there is, in Florida, there is the Florida Supreme Court in a case called Cherry versus Deason ruled that a government lawyer cannot act as both prosecutor and advisor to the board. And in that case, it had to do with the Florida Public Service Commission. And so you had the Public Service Commission's attorney sitting up here. And then when it came time to argue a case, he got up and went down to the podium and started arguing a case. So what the Florida Supreme Court said is, you can have two lawyers from the same law firm that do these different jobs, but the same lawyer can't do it. So if I'm sitting up here telling you what the law is and, and so forth, I'm your lawyer. But the manager can say, this is such a complex case, it's got, potential legal issues. And usually we would have that discussion, the manager and I. We would have one of the members of our office come and prosecute the case, essentially put on management's case of why was this employee fired, offer evidence, cross-examine witnesses. That wouldn't be my role because I'm your advisor.
Got
Does
it.
that make sense?
Totally. Any other questions, comments so far? All right. For me, at least, the next one, we start to get into the crux of the responsibilities of the Civil Service Commission. It says that the Civil Service Commission is an advisory board that makes non-binding advisory recommendations to the city manager. And that's not a change, that's the way it is. But now the change is, in its quasi-judicial role, hearing post-termination appeals, the Civil Service Commission will make written findings of fact and conclusions as to the application of those facts to the city's policies. The written recommendation order may be rendered by the Civil Service Commission immediately upon conclusion of a hearing, or if adequate time is required to draft a suitable order, it may be rendered at a subsequent meeting to occur in a reasonable time frame. So I'm understanding this to be if a city employee wants to dispute termination, we're not talking about discipline, right? This is limited to termination.
Correct.
Then they can come to us. We can listen and make recommendations, but they are not binding.
Correct.
How many times has this happened in the past where the Civil Service Commission has been involved in this situation and made recommendations?
We don't know
I
how many
think-
times in the past, but since I've been here since 2017, there's been 2 cases.
2 cases. And in those cases, what happened to the recommendation of the Civil Service Commission?
For the one, they made the recommendation and gave it to the city manager, and it went from there. And then the second one, I think, went to litigation.
And in the end, was the Civil Service Commission's recommendation
Adopted?
adopted? Thank you.
I don't think so.
I sat on both of those.
I don't think they were.
Hearings, and they weren't.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were rather complex, I would say. At least one of them was.
Well, one of them directly involved the city manager.
Yes, it
And the
did.
reason for the changes that are, some of the changes that are being made
Yes,
Right, because
that's
that
correct.
recommendation went to city manager.
about the city manager.
Yes,
Yes.
and so that's where,
But
We're fixing that in the next
Yeah,
ordinance.
but that one won't happen again. So that's, the other one, not sure.
Okay. And Paul, do you remember about how much time the group spent on doing research, listening, and so on?
a good fair amount, I would say. The hearings only lasted a few hours, but I'd really like someday to talk about the one of them, how it came to be in the first place was all hearsay. And the manager upheld his position, and he also refused to attend our meetings, or he called in sick or something, I don't know, but we tried to get him to testify, and he did not. But he did take his action, and the employee was terminated.
Okay. I recall in the previous versions that we are allowed to subpoena witnesses,
You still are.
and we still are. If the person doesn't show up, do we have any recourse? Any new language?
So the non-compliance would go to the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners, if it agreed that the person needs to be compelled, would instruct the city attorney to file whatever legal petition before the circuit judge to issue an order to compel the witness to attend. Municipalities have the ability to compel folks to testify. It's a bit of a process, because you got to get a judge to do it. But judges will do it, you know, if you say, here's the subpoena that we sent them, and here's an affidavit of noncompliance, and the judge will give an order that compels the person to appear at the proceeding under penalty of arrest. So,
And did we follow that procedure in this case, Paul, where the manager didn't show up?
No, we did not.
Okay.
I think you had, you didn't really have legal counsel at that time, right?
Oh, yes, everyone had legal counsel. In fact, they had a labor attorney, the city attorney, or the Civil Service Commission attorney. I'm trying to think if the employee had an attorney, but she presented herself very well, I thought. I think the city railroaded that employee out of here. And
Well, I think the reality is, you know, the manager, I've heard several times, and he's here, could testify that if y'all want him to be here, he's going to be here. He's got nothing to hide. He will come and talk about his actions he took and why he took them, and that's just the way that's going to be. And because of the other changes we're making in the code, you know, the issues as to him are going to go directly to the commissioners to deal with. So you won't have a repeat of what you had last time. And I don't know what your board attorney did back in the day. I think it was a Tampa law firm that represented you, and so I apologize as a lawyer if they didn't give you good legal advice, but, you know, you had the power back then, and you would in the future. If some future manager decides not to appear before you, it'll take time, but we'll get him or her here.
Okay, good. So we've closed that loophole then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this? The next part, we serve without compensation. Okay, I think that stays. 2-28, procedural matters. I'm not seeing anything different. Is there anything, it's in posted?
Again, a lot of these edits don't really change policy as much as they do bring clarity. You know, instead of using the passive voice, notification shall be provided. we say, "The city clerk serving as ex officio secretary shall ensure notice." It places whose responsibility is, so it's very clear. And so that's, again, a lot of these changes are just to make it more clear, because I have experience in all of this, and if you don't make it clear, it just can fall apart, so.
Okay. And then on to B and C. Again, it just looks like a little more clarity, but we can make recommendations to the city on any manner within the scope. But again, we're still, it's recommendations, and nothing is binding, correct?
That's correct. The charter has you as an advisory board.
Okay. D talks about written records, and the city clerk shall serve as the ex officio secretary, and you'll take care of making sure that everything is documented and whatnot. Okay. Any questions, comments up until this point?
I do. I have
Yes.
a question anyway. If we, what, is it in the charter that we act as an advisory board only? Or is it in the city code? And if it's in the city code, when was that initiated?
So the
I do remember seeing that
Yeah,
several
Article-
places.
Article 5,
Are we in the
Section
charter?
5.7 in the city charter outlines personnel, Section 5.7 of the charter, Personnel Systems Civil Service Commission.
Yeah.
It's on page 10, it's number
your
6.
packet,
Yeah.
Section B?
Yeah, so it's Charter Section
5.7.
5-7C6.
Correct.
Render advisory opinions based on its findings. So some other civil service commissions have actual authority to order reinstatement or whatnot, or to reduce a termination to a 10-day suspension or whatnot. This charter doesn't have that. This charter says you advise the manager if you think the manager's disciplinary action or director's disciplinary action was wrong for some reason, that it wasn't supported by the facts or whatnot. But ultimately, the authority rests with the manager.
Paul, I sense you've got an underlying question or thoughts on that.
No, if it's in the charter, that's the way it is.
Okay,
If it's city code, maybe we ought to look at the charter again.
right.
Yes, I know, I had a civil service committee. We reviewed the charter for about a good year, I think. And I know they, at that time, was wanting to possibly bring put a question on the ballot to strengthen that, but that's where it just laid, it didn't go anywhere.
Right. Section H, city managers shall coordinate with the chairperson and HR to choose the meeting dates. That's fine. I, there's a lot of new language in section I. Is this clarification, Rob, or is this? It seems to be a lot of what we're already doing.
Yeah, again,
So it's just
it's making very clear
documenting.
what the process is, who's going to do what the clerk is going to do, but there's no real change in how we operate.
Okay. Okay, I is the same. I'm moving along. Please stop me if anybody wants to add anything. Okay, the resources staff shall serve as staff person for the commission.
I think you already went through that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we already did, sorry.
You were on 2-128.
2-128, right. And written records, okay. We have the roles. And then the last section, 2-129, powers and duties. This states that we've got the ongoing, we're charged with development of the city's classification and pay plans, which is back in the charter. I'm not sure how the rest of you feel about this, but I don't know that that I feel qualified to talk about pay plans for the staff. I would think that the city manager and his staff are qualified to do that without our input.
I think that's just complying with the charter, because as you stated, it's in the charter. That's one of the duties of the commission.
The reality of it is, because it's a charter provision, we all have to obey it. And so when the manager develops a pay plan, he put it before you. He will say, this is my pay plan that I've developed. I will talk to you about it. Here's what's in my mind, why I did it. And just as advocates for the employees and so forth, you ask questions, you poke around, you know, maybe give him suggestions of could he do things better. But until it's out of the charter, it's a function of yours, and so that's why I put it in
That's
this
it,
code.
okay, thank you. Now, I've been on the commission for about 3 years, and I have never seen a pay plan. When
We will
is?
bring you one at the next meeting.
There you go.
Oh,
We will put it on the agenda, and there will be some, just to advise all of you, there are already some changes to the classifications, obviously some of the salaries as well, which occur every year, salary adjustments based on the budget that the commission, the Board of Commission adopts. However, what I will be bringing you, and I will need to brief each one of the members of the Board of Commission as to what I will present to you, will be a matter that will be part of our budget to adjust positions that I believe are not properly classified in terms of exempt and non-exempt. For some reason here in Madeira Beach, just about all of our positions are non-exempt. So we have managers, supervisors who do high-functioning executive level work that are hourly
Right.
and subject to overtime, and believe not any, I don't think, a legal issue or ramifications or violations. They just need to be properly classified, but it does have a budget impact. And so just to, in full disclosure, that I'll have to brief the commission because it will impact the budget then, and we'll do that before the next scheduled meeting. And then at the next scheduled meeting, bring you what that pay classification, what it currently is, and what we will be looking for next fiscal year, starting October 1.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
More information that you probably wanted to hear.
When would we expect that? Like, in what month, on a regular basis?
The pay plan?
Yeah.
I guess this is probably a good time to do it, either March or April,
Okay.
simply because it's before the budget. And then to get your input on what it looks like, and if you have any recommendations as well for personnel specifically impacting our budget.
Correct.
Okay.
My understanding is and also, because I heard this from one of the attorneys that was at this meeting when we went through that long period of time, it's on page 10, which is the city charter, section 5.7C2. In C, it says, the Civil Service Commission shall prepare personnel rules, and then when concurred in by the city manager, of course, they go to the Board of Commissioners, and they can approve it with or without changes. And it says the rule shall include, but are not limited to, a pay plan, and so it gets adopted with that personnel policy. It's
Correct.
part
Yeah,
of that.
It's all part of it.
And it doesn't get changed until it gets changed. You adopted one in the last one, and then they include it again in this one.
And then the next section, B, talks about our role in taking a look at market conditions and comparative wage data. Do you see that proceeding, that you'll do the research and bring it to
Yes.
us, that we won't be expected to do that research?
You can if you, but we will definitely do, that's part of our role.
Well, again,
Okay.
part of you as a citizen oversight committee is, he's going to give you, this is management's position, we've hired a consultant, maybe to help us. But
Yes.
y'all, as independent folks, can go out and do your own homework, and that's the opportunity for the citizens of the city, through you, to talk to management about what are you doing with our employees, and advocating if you think something needs to be different. It's not an adversarial thing, it's more of a check and balance to make sure that somebody who's neutral is looking at the plans that he's producing.
Agreed, and I welcome that, and to my previous point, I've been here 3 years and I've never seen that data, and I look forward to participating in that role, so thank you for this.
And also, anytime in that research, as the attorney was talking about, as your ex officio, your secretary to this board, if you need research done, you can contact me and we can get that done. We can do a lot of the legwork for you.
All right. And then the same thing, that we work with you to develop the classifications and pay plans, so that's exactly, Robin, what you've already addressed. Before Rob has to leave for another meeting, something that's been on my mind, and I just want to open it up for discussion, is it appears that the role of the Civil Service Commission can take, let me simplify it, 3 flavors. One with teeth, one as an advisory board, which is where we fall, or there is no Civil Service Commission, and we entrust the city manager, the mayor, the Board of Commissioners to do their job. I would like to ask my fellow folks what are your thoughts on this, and which direction should we be heading? This is more of a strategic question than kind of the details.
Well, I personally feel that we're necessary in this city.
Yeah, you have to have it.
I think we're limited, and that's probably good, to what the charter says we should do. And otherwise, we'd have to have, the voters decide whether we should exist or not exist. And at one point in time, I've thought about that a couple of times, but I think we're a safety net here for employees. Even though the manager may outrule us, at least we have our say.
Okay. And you're comfortable with that middle of the road, that we can advise, but
Well-
we don't have teeth?
Yeah, I think we have more teeth than you realize.
Because you prepare the pay plan, you prepare the personnel policy, and then you take it to, he goes in, looks, and see if he agrees with it.
Well, we're talking about in the case if an employee is terminated.
Yeah, and I think
We
there's
we
also,
can't compel the city to change decision.
No.
That's what I mean by having teeth.
right, and that's probably better for us, because it seems like they get very complicated. And I wouldn't dare venture into something out without a legal consultant. And I think for that reason, that's why I would choose the middle of the road, that we act as advisory at this point. And I really would hesitate to think that we would take authority over the manager.
The reality is that I've seen both systems, and so I think that your colleague is right, Madam Chair, that you have more authority, if you will, than you realize, just being advisory, because if the employee who's appealing a termination is before you and arguing a case, and you agree with the employee that they shouldn't have been terminated, and you render your recommended order to the manager, and the manager decides to still do termination, that employee doesn't have to be done there. They can go to court and they could say, I feel that I've been denied due process. And as part of my argument, here's the Civil Service Commission's order that says I was denied due process, or whatever the issue may be. And then it's for the manager to defend himself. So the manager, at least this manager I know, he's very, competent and open, and so he's going to listen to what you say, and it's going to cause him to contemplate and think and reconsider. He may not agree with your recommendation, for whatever reason, but I think that, on the side of, like in St. Pete, where they did have the authority to overturn, was a lot of assertion of politics and, oh, you just did this because you hate this particular mayor or whatever, and sometimes that was true. I mean, I saw political enemies of the mayor, would get appointed, or, they were appointed under a prior administration, and then a new mayor came in, and so politics got in the middle of what should be an employee-centered issue. So, I mean, and again, this is all academic because the charter is the charter, and until the voters decide to change, you are advisory whether you like it or not.
Right. Judith Ann, your thoughts?
I think Paul summed up my feelings exactly as to the attorney. I think it's a good safety net, checks and balances. We're part of the process, but I wouldn't want it to be different from that.
And then also, when it goes to the Board of Commissioners at a workshop first, it's a joint meeting with the Civil Service Commission. And although, you work through everything, the commission, it actually stops with them. Because in that meeting, you get your opportunity to say, well, I really wanted this, or, or you agree with everything. And then the Board of Commissioners can adopt that policy as is or with changes.
And
we've
that's
seen
just
that.
for the personnel manual, though.
Right.
Which includes.
Which includes
whatever.
everything that's listed in the charter as.
Correct.
Right. Well, thank you all for helping me clarify my thoughts. I have been just pondering whether, do we stay as we are as an advisory committee? I would never, ever want to have more teeth that we could mandate like St. Pete. But I also entertained the thought of going to the voters and seeing if the Civil Service Commission should be done away with in favor of trusting our city employees, our mayor, and elected officials. But you all have helped me think through that it is a safety net, and understanding now that we do have more steps available. Ultimately, the employee has the right to retain a lawyer, and we could just provide additional help if that were the case.
You've given the citizens voice as to how you feel the case should have gone down, yeah.
Okay.
And because my minutes are ticking away, first of all, can the minutes reflect that you all recommend to the commission adoption of 2023-06? Because I wanted to talk about 07 in 2 minutes, too.
Yes. Does that require a vote, or just, yeah?
Well, Either a motion or just ask for consensus of the commission so that
Okay.
the minutes can reflect.
I'd like to make a motion that the minutes reflect that we are in favor of the document as we just reviewed.
I'll second that.
In favor?
Jean Embler,
Affirmed?
Paul Tilka,
Yes.
Judith Ann.
Yes.
The motion carried 3-0.
So really quickly, because I just have a couple of minutes, I wanted to talk about 2023-07 because we did want your recommendation there. This again stems from the discussion we had that, we had a situation where the manager had a role to play in reviewing his own conduct, and so part of this gets to that and creates a separate system where concerns about the manager could be brought to the mayor, and the mayor could then work with the attorney, and it could be investigated in a way that the manager can't exert his or her influence. And again, we've got a very integrity-filled manager here, so that won't be a problem, but we look to the future when we set policies and the past, and what happened in the past. With that, there's also a component that is a whistleblower component, and there, the issue is there is a Florida statute that protects public employee whistleblowers. And so if they're retaliated against for turning something in, that a government official is doing something that is unlawful or gross mismanagement or whatnot, and jeopardizing safety, that government cannot retaliate against them for having done so. What you get sometimes is that an employee will maybe do that kind of a thing or try to do that kind of a thing, not because they really know of anything that went wrong, but they know they're about to be fired or disciplined, and so they try to sort of put a cloak around themselves of protection. Okay, now you can't fire me because I've, put in. And so what the statutory scheme allows is that if a local government adopts an ordinance that provides a system for employees to report whistleblower-covered activities, then the employee has to follow that internal process first before he or she can come and sue. And so that's part of why we're doing this, is to say, we welcome, if any of our employees has anything to say of misdeeds that are going on, embezzlement, whatever it might be, to follow this process and turn that in. It will be properly investigated, and again, if it's against the manager himself, then the city attorney will take care of it. If it's against the city attorney, then the manager or the mayor will take care of it. But no one person has power to block themselves. But also, it prevents an employee from just sort of saying, well, I'm throwing this accusation out there, and then I'm just going to rush to court and sue you, without giving the city an opportunity to look into the accusation, because it may have merit. And then, whoever, if there's somebody embezzling, we need to find that out, and we'll fire them or whatever. But that's the justification for ordinance 23-07. Did any of you have any questions about it as you read it?
So, yeah, well, we're getting through it. Does this only pertain to employees whistleblowing?
That's
or
correct.
Not
Well,
citizens?
it's employees and vendors of the city. So for instance, if a contractor that is working for the city should happen to discover, hey, I'm doing the books for the city, as a separate CPA, and I've just caught embezzlement, that vendor also has whistleblower rights to be able
Okay.
to come in and report. They also have protections. The ordinance, though, is focused on employees because vendors are just a different, they would be protected under the statute, but this ordinance deals with just employees. Does that answer the question?
So like a resident would not be able to present an issue they encounter with a city employee?
They can, and that's just a First Amendment issue, that any employee or any citizen is entitled to approach the government to petition for redress of grievance. So my grievance is, I just discovered someone's embezzling or whatever,
Yeah.
and commissioners, I want you to deal with it, or go to the manager, I want you to deal with it. And so if government retaliates against them, there is case law under the First Amendment in federal court that says you're not allowed to retaliate against someone for having exercised their First Amendment rights.
Would we hear those cases?
No, those are go to federal court.
Federal
No,
court.
and you don't have to really go to the city. The citizens out there can actually file with Commission on Ethics or different
Or
organizations.
file a lawsuit with circuit court.
Yes.
So there's various redress of grievances that are available.
And I apologize, I do have to go to my next workshop.
That's okay.
Do we want to take a ruling on this issue before Rob leaves, or are we going to go through it more? Because you seem to want to have it.
I have to leave. If you want to keep talking amongst yourselves before you vote, that's fine.
Did you want us to agree on this before you leave?
If you're ready to, yeah.
Are we?
Yeah, I'm ready to agree.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2023-07.
And I'll second.
I'm in favor.
Paul Tilka,
Yes?
Jean Embler,
Yes?
Judith Ann McLaughlin.
Yes.
Motion carried 3-0.
Okay, thank you.
Let me know when your next meeting is scheduled.
Have we scheduled our next meeting especially now with Sean's no longer holding the position, he had asked for some time to collect everything and produce a final document, and then I think we were going to set our next meeting. So,
I've been working on putting your last changes in there. And then I'll give that to the city manager, and then we'll put it in the book. You can go in and set one if we're ready for it. If we need to change it, we'll let you know.
Yeah, let's take a look.
When do you think it might be ready? After what date should we start looking for meeting dates?
Should have it ready by the end of this month. Because he's also working on the pay plan and everything to bring forward. Oh, I meant April.
By the end of April, okay.
Yeah, April.
We wouldn't
We
have,
could, probably
that one.
the last week in April,
All right,
if we could,
yeah.
Wednesday works or any,
I don't know, to review the pay plan, and especially since there's going to be a lot of changes.
June would be better. I mean, bring it back to you in sometime in May and give us a little bit longer.
Feels like it should be 2 meetings. I just,
Yeah.
that's just an awful lot to review, the final document that we've put together, and the pay plan,
right.
and,
And remember, the pay plan is part of the personnel
yeah,
manual.
yeah.
So we can take it in steps. We still got a ways to go before it goes to the Board of Commissioners for a workshop.
Okay, so you don't have a set date for that
No.
that we're running up against? All right.
Or we can, when we get done and prepare, get the handbook done, we can call you and set a meeting at that time if you want to. It might be better.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Give us a heads up and a couple of dates. In the meantime, Judith Ann, I know you've, some dates that aren't good for you?
Like May,
Well, we're talking into June, right? Yeah.
June, I'm not sure. I run a civics institute, a residential civics institute, and yeah, I am not sure that I can commit to June dates, but I know I'll be here in May.
Unless you want to just wait on us to call you with some times and dates, or we get from you the dates and times, and then we can coordinate the meeting at that time.
I mean, like June 1st or 2nd, but after that, I don't know that I'll be in town.
What about Thursday, June 1st?
Let's go
That's-
for that.
More than a month away. It's
Okay.
Yeah.
2 months away.
I know, it just feels like we've been working on this for an eternity. I look forward to wrapping it up.
Oh, I lied, I'm so sorry. I may be in Washington leading a conference, I just realized. We have to finalize that, but it's possible I'll be doing this rule of law thing.
About Wednesday, the 31st?
It's supposed to be Wednesday to Friday.
Tuesday, the 30th? Before you leave?
Okay, can we make it early just in case I may fly out that day?
What time would you like?
4:30 a.m., how's that?
Yeah. That's about when I'm free.
You probably want to have it early so that you have time to talk about it.
9 a.m.
9 is good.
on Wednesday, May the 30th.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Excuse me, Tuesday, May 30th. 9 a.m.
Great. All right. Any other thoughts or any other old business, new business? Then, I don't think I have to, but I'm going to declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
3:00 PM.